Anil Ambani, $42 billion. In 2008, Anil Ambani stood at the top of the world. His net worth was estimated at more than $42 billion, making him the sixth richest man alive. He wasn't just another business tycoon, he was part of India's most famous business family. His older brother, Mukesh Ambani, still runs Reliance Industries and is today one of the world's richest men. For a time, it looked like Anil would be right there with him. Anil controlled businesses in telecom, power, infrastructure, and financial services. His group borrowed billions to expand quickly. The logic was simple: borrow now, build fast, and pay later once the profits come in, but that plan only works if the profits arrive. They didn't. Competition in the telecom sector was brutal. His companies lost ground to rivals like Airtel and later Jio, the telecom company launched by his own brother. Power projects stalled, infrastructure deals ran over budget, and the loans piled up higher and higher. Imagine taking out 10 mortgages, betting that your job will get you 10 promotions in 5 years. But instead, you lose the job. That's what happened to Anil. By 2020, in a London courtroom, Ambani said his net worth was effectively zero. From yachts, jets, and mansions, he went to pleading insolvency before creditors. Ike Batista, $30 billion. The Brazilian billionaire Ike Batista was the face of national pride in the 2000s. By 2012, he was worth $30 billion, the seventh richest man on earth. Batista didn't just run businesses, he sold dreams. He promised that Brazil, then riding a commodity boom, would become an energy superpower. He claimed his oil company, OGX, was sitting on reserves that would make Brazil the Saudi Arabia of the Americas. For a while, investors believed him. Shares soared, money poured in, and Batista basked in celebrity status. He flaunted a fleet of luxury cars, speedboats, and even a yacht parked outside his Rio mansion. He gave interviews confidently saying he would soon overtake Bill Gates. But here's the problem: the oil wasn't there. OGX's fields produced only a fraction of what Batista promised. Investors began to panic, debt mounted. By 2013, the company was collapsing. Batista's wealth didn't just shrink, it went negative. He owed more than he owned. Imagine buying lottery tickets, then telling your friends you already won, spending the winnings on cars and houses, only to realize the numbers never matched. That was Batista's downfall. By 2017, he was sentenced to prison for bribery and market manipulation. From $30 billion to handcuffs, his story is one of the sharpest wealth collapses in modern history. Sean Quinn, $6 billion. Sean Quinn's story is pure rise and fall. Born in rural Ireland, he left school early and started a small business selling gravel. From that humble beginning, he built a sprawling empire that stretched into cement, insurance, hotels, and real estate. By 2008, Forbes listed him as worth $6 billion, the richest man in Ireland. But Quinn's fatal mistake was his obsession with Anglo-Irish Bank. He believed in the bank so much that he poured billions into its shares, even borrowing against his own empire to buy more stock. At one point, he held nearly 25% of the bank. Then came the global financial crash of 2008. Anglo-Irish collapsed under bad loans, and the shares became worthless almost overnight. It's like betting your entire retirement fund on one company because you're convinced it can't fail. Then that company goes bust in the worst financial crisis in decades. That's exactly what happened to Quinn. His empire crumbled, and by 2011, he was forced to declare bankruptcy. Alan Stanford, $2 billion. Alan Stanford was once worth about $2.2 billion. He lived like a king, sponsoring cricket tournaments, flying in private jets, and even being knighted in Antigua. To the outside world, he was a larger-than-life billionaire banker. But beneath the luxury, Stanford's empire was a fraud. In 2009, regulators exposed his business as a $7 billion Ponzi scheme. He sold certificates of deposit, promising safe, steady returns. But the returns weren't coming from investments. They were just recycled from new investors' money. Think of it like a friend who always pays you back quickly when you lend them cash. You assume they're rich, but really they're just borrowing from 5 other friends to repay you. That's what Stanford did on a massive scale. When the truth came out, thousands of investors lost life savings. Stanford was convicted and sentenced to 110 years in prison. From billion-dollar cricket matches broadcast globally to a prison cell in Texas, his fall is one of the starkest in financial history. Björgolfur Gudmundsson, $1.2 billion. Björgolfur Gudmundsson's name might not be familiar worldwide, but in Iceland, he was a big deal. Worth around $1.2 billion, he was one of the country's leading businessmen and even owned West Ham United Football Club in England. His wealth came from shipping, brewing, and especially banking, but his empire was heavily tied to Iceland's financial system. When the global financial crisis hit in 2008, Iceland's banks collapsed almost overnight. Gudmundsson had borrowed heavily against shares in those same banks. When the banks failed, his collateral was worthless and his debts remained. It's like mortgaging your house to buy stocks, then watching both the housing market and the stock market collapse at the same time. There's nothing left to pay with. By 2009, Gudmundsson was bankrupt, his football club gone, and his fortune erased. Patricia Kluge, $1 billion divorce fortune. Patricia Kluge's wealth didn't come from building an empire, it came from her divorce. When she separated from John Kluge, once the richest man in America, she walked away with a fortune that placed her among the world's wealthiest women. With that settlement, she set out to craft a new identity, not as a billionaire's ex-wife, but as a businesswoman in her own right. Her passion project was wine. She poured her fortune into creating a luxury vineyard in Virginia, aiming to rival the great estates of France. The vineyard was elegant, the bottles expensive, and for a time her plans seemed glamorous. She hosted charity events and attracted celebrity attention. But wine is a notoriously tough business. Profits are uncertain and the upfront costs are massive. Her vineyard didn't generate the returns she needed, and soon debts mounted. By 2011, she was bankrupt. The estate, the jewelry, the business, gone. Her story highlights a painful truth. Having wealth isn't the same as sustaining wealth. It's like winning the lottery and then putting every dollar into a restaurant that never fills up. The money doesn't last unless the business does. Masayoshi Son, $70 billion lost, but came back. Masayoshi Son is a rare case. Unlike most billionaires who collapse and never recover, he lost more than anyone in history, then climbed back. In 2000, Son's net worth was around $76 billion thanks to his investments during the dot-com bubble. When the bubble burst, his wealth shrank by about $70 billion in a single year. That's the largest personal wealth loss ever recorded. For context, it's like losing the GDP of a country like Sri Lanka in 12 months. Most people would never recover from that, but Son did. He doubled down on tech investments, most famously putting $20 million into a young Chinese e-commerce company called Alibaba. That single bet eventually turned into a stake worth tens of billions. Elizabeth Holmes, $4.5 billion. Elizabeth Holmes was once hailed as the next Steve Jobs. At just 19 years old, she dropped out of Stanford to found Theranos, a company that promised to revolutionize medicine. Her pitch was simple but powerful. Run hundreds of medical tests with just a drop of blood. By her early 30s, she was worth about $4.5 billion on paper, thanks to her majority stake in the company. Investors poured in money, Walgreens signed deals, and the media crowned her a genius. But behind the black turtlenecks and bold claims, the technology never worked. Tests were inaccurate and often done on third-party machines. Patients received false results. Doctors were misled. It wasn't just a bad business, it was a dangerous one. When journalists and regulators uncovered the truth, Theranos collapsed. Holmes was convicted of fraud and sentenced to prison. Her fortune, once billions, evaporated completely. Her story is a warning about hype. Investors wanted so badly to believe in the next big thing that they ignored red flags. It's like buying a car without ever opening the hood, only to realize later there's no engine inside. Yoshikazu Tanaka, $2 billion. Yoshikazu Tanaka was once Japan's youngest billionaire, hailed as a homegrown tech prodigy. His company, Gree, was a social networking site that exploded in popularity in the late 2000s. At the height of the boom, his net worth reached around $2 billion. But timing is everything in tech. Just as Gree was rising, global giants like Facebook and Twitter began to dominate. Smartphones changed how people interacted online, and Gree couldn't keep up. Its user base shrank, its relevance faded, and the stock price collapsed. Unlike some others on this list, Tanaka wasn't accused of fraud or reckless borrowing. His fortune simply shrank because the market moved on. It's the same as owning the coolest DVD rental chain right before Netflix took off. The product wasn't bad, the world just changed. Today, Tanaka is still involved in tech, but nowhere near the global spotlight. His story reminds us that not every billionaire collapse is about scandal. Sometimes, it's just about being in the wrong place when the tide turns. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want more stories explained simply and clearly, make sure to subscribe for future videos.